everybody, and welcome to today's session. Today we're going to be having a panel discussion, and it's around competing in the rapidly changing business landscape that we have today and using technology to prepare for 2022 and beyond in the wine industry. We have a number of speakers on the panel today, and I'd like to introduce you to all of them. But don't forget that if at any point you have any questions, do pop them into the chat and we'll be asking them as we go along to the panel. First of all, Claudio.
Hi, morning everyone. So I'm Claudio Martell. I'm the Bevica product director. Bevica is an ERP solution that tries to solve all the business problems you have. So we're quite eager today to have a chat about how the product works, where the product can go in the future, given this changing landscape that we're going to be talking about.
Thanks, Claudio. And David.
Hello, hi, I'm David G. I work for HG Technology. We're a consultancy service. We specialise in finance and ERP advisory and also document management, predominantly Office 365 related, but not just that. So thank you.
And over to you, Will.
Hi everyone, my name's Will McIntee. I'm a founder of a company called Companial. The purpose of our organisation is to actually look after companies such as Bevica and work very closely with Microsoft across the world to help organisations like Bevica take care of all of their customers' challenges. I've worked in the ERP or business applications industry for 25 plus years, so I'm looking forward to the chat about the impacts that we're seeing today.
And it's Celine. Oh, Celine, I think you're on mute. If you can unmute.
Oh, sorry about that. So yeah, Celine Comyn set up Comyn Consultancy last year. So I'm mostly specialized in wine technology implementation, so helping customers to mostly go live with Bevica at the moment, but happy to help with other systems as well. And then I do a little bit of back office support for people to be able to get their company growing and get more profitable.
Great, thank you. So now everyone's introduced themselves, and if you did hear that fire alarm go off earlier, that's just a test, it won't be happening again. So if I can pass over to Claudio, just to introduce us to the conversation, some of the things that we'll be talking about. I'll be keeping an eye on the questions as they come in, so please do ask. Claudio.
Yeah, hi. So I hope you've noticed that the panelists we've invited today are from inside and outside the drinks industry. We think that's quite important to broaden the kind of the horizons we have on the product and the way we look into the future, so we don't navel gaze basically and stick our heads in the drinks industry itself. I did make a note of some of the changes that have been going on in the UK in the drinks industry over the past couple of years, and the list is quite scarily long. So for example, we've got making tax digital, VAT changes, so specifically in the hospitality area, for example, Brexit and the pandemic, obviously. Then within the industry, we've got the deposit return scheme, the alcohol reform bill that's coming in next year, plastic packaging tax, extended producer responsibilities. I mean, that in itself is a ridiculously long list of things that are impacting the industry, and that as a product, we try and keep on top of, and we try and help our customers. So Celine, if I can start with you, you've obviously, these things have impacted you and the people you work with. How do you think people are dealing with it?
The most response I've seen is people thinking straight away about how they manage their data and look at how they operate. And it's very quickly came to, do they have a system who could support them to carry on growing as a company, but to respond to all the needs they have due to, as you just mentioned, a few, the plastic packaging tax, the alcohol duty is going to change soon, things like that. So yeah, for me, what I observe within the industry is most of people now looking at, do I have a system that will support me to be able to assess those new, I will say, legislation, and do it in a very efficient way and not kind of waste time, and have the team to be able to work efficiently as well.
So Will, from a kind of a broader point of view, How can we see that technology can help?
So that's a really interesting question, because I think, if we're having this conversation 3 years ago, the answer would be very, very different. If I look at the evolution of Microsoft in particular, and I'm one of these lucky souls who've both worked inside Microsoft and around Microsoft for a very, very, very long time. I've seen this revolution for of the cloud in business applications, in particular in the last 2 or 3 years. We've kind of had this term cloud kicking around for some time, but it's actually really in the last 2 or 3 years, in what I would describe as the SMB sector, where I'm seeing the organization saying we're gonna go cloud first as a business. And cloud isn't just a technology; it's also a way of thinking in some respects. So particularly from a purchasing perspective, in terms of you're renting a solution, you're asking a bunch of centralized experts, such as Bevica maybe, to look after and manage and maintain the system for you, and you're kind of grazing and consuming as the end customer on that platform. I would also say, from a technology standpoint, Microsoft have really upped their game, to be honest, in the last 2 or 3 years, particularly around their Business Central platform. That's their ERP solution for the SMB market. But they've also really invested in this concept called the Power Platform, which is a combination of Power Apps, a no-code, low-code environment to create point solutions, Power BI, Power Automate, workflow automation solution. And I think, if you kind of take all of the Microsoft stuff together and put it into let's say a virtual wine vat, seeing as we're at Wycall, give it a good stir, you can actually create. Well, I'm actually seeing some great solutions getting created that are industry-focused solutions. We are seeing, from a buying trend perspective, and I'm super lucky. I get to work with more than 1,000 partners throughout the world. We're seeing this. We're seeing this, not only this cloud revolution, but I would say industry standardized revolution as well. Back in days of yore, someone would buy an ERP solution, and they would then configure it and tweak it and make it suitable for their particular business. But we're seeing a lot more what I would call industry solutions that sit on top of the Microsoft platform, such as Bevica, right? Which has got workflows and processes and capabilities built in that are very, very specific to a single industry. And that's probably my biggest takeaway in terms of the last 2 or 3 years, in terms of where the technology is heading.
Well, no, interesting. Yes, I think that the cloud, the fact that customers can be on the cloud so easily, I think gives us this opportunity to react much more quickly to what's changing in the environment. So, for example, when the pandemic first hit, our customers that were on the cloud within a day were able to send everyone home, and they could work from home just as easily as being in the office. Customers who were more traditionally kind of on-premise based with a server somewhere in their office struggled a lot more to immediately be able to work from home. So kind of reaction times are a lot quicker and a lot easier, even in terms of updating the software, making sure it's relevant. David, are you seeing that the cloud is something that people are embracing?
Yes, I mean, I think to some extent there's always a bit of nervousness. I mean, one of the things, I guess, following on from what Will was saying, one of the things that I found quite interesting in one of our wine customers is that they moved away from Excel. So because now that there are cloud apps to answer specific proper problems that can be dealt with, you can, and Bevica is an example, but there's lots of solutions that actually deal with data and manage data properly rather than kind of Excel. So that's kind of one of the things, and that makes things much more robust. And then you can start to add the automation, which is probably one of the bigger buzzwords around at the moment as well. So I think that's what we're seeing on our side. There's again the Power Platform, which we'll hit again and again probably throughout the morning, is something that's adding a lot to businesses.
Okay. So Celine, from the point of view of people reacting to change, do you see people being enthusiastic about having to make these changes in your experience?
It's I will say it's a mix and match. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but everyone come to it quite easily. I think when they realize that going to I will say much more streamlined ERP or system or whatever they choose, and they kind of like really assess how much profitability and how the team could work better. Most of people literally dive in very, very well, and then they start to get a bit more enthusiastic and then want to go to the next step. So as Will and David said, talk about all the app they could integrate with. So then with the Microsoft platform, suddenly talk about the Power App and all the things, and want to kind of get very to a point where it is easy and adaptable. And as we said with the pandemic, be able to work pretty much from everywhere and kind of like give everyone flexibility. So I think it's getting more and more toward a positive attitude to getting a new system or a new way of working.
Okay. One of the reasons I mentioned kind of the enthusiasm is that one of the frustrations we have is that being a Microsoft product, we have access to all these Power Apps, Power Automate, all the things that have been mentioned, but we do struggle, I think, to engage our customers in seeing the benefit and being able to use it. And I'm kind of hoping that over time, the next couple of years, with all these changes, people will see that it's not a scary thing to do. It's there, it's available, and it's just a matter of widening your maybe traditional view on what an ERP is. It's not just a piece of software in a box. It can do a whole lot more. You need to let it do that. You need to relax into that world, if you like. Will and David, maybe, what do you think we can do to try and encourage people to think of ERP as being more than just this kind of sales order processing box?
Yeah. So if I can jump in there, and I'm exceptionally biased when it comes to talking about ERP, because it's the only thing I've ever worked with since university. The way I see it is this: is that for many years, decades, in fact, we've always said that your ERP system is the brains and the beating heart of an organization. And actually, the truth be told, is up until very recently, the technology hasn't been around to unleash the power of your ERP system into everybody's hands. And this is what I think is kind of fascinating, particularly when you look at what you describe as your ERP platform, Business Central, NAV today, plus Power Apps. Now, one of the challenges when you're faced with a piece of Microsoft technology is you kind of have to think, you have to not think about the technology, you have to think about the problem. Because the technology can quite frankly do anything you want it to do. And sometimes that could be the wrong thing for you to want it to do. But the key thing is to think of a pain point. And if I step out of the wine industry for a moment and look at some of the examples that I've seen today of how an ERP solution is being extended. We work with an organization that sells Microsoft solutions into the caravan park and holiday home industry. They've got Business Central as the beating heart of their organization, but they've also created some power. So individual customers and the partner have created individual Power Apps that plug into that ERP system. So, for example, one of the Power Apps is a simple form for cleaners to sign off that a holiday home is ready to be sold, ready to be consumed by the end customer. And it's thinking about niche, nuanced workloads that may not be initially apparent as an ERP workload, but everything at the end of the day within any organization should go back and touch your ERP system, because there's a cost or there's a revenue attached to every activity within an organization.
Maybe we should stop then talking about ERP and just have another word that encompasses everything rather than just what people traditionally think of as ERP.
Yeah.
Maybe we can try and think of something. And you say.
Yeah. One of the things that was picked that Will mentioned earlier, and that's certainly something very much that we're seeing, is that there are specific business solutions that are market driven, and so Bevica is one, but we also work a lot in the property industry, and again there's another solution that's done on that. But what the big change is that it's not a company developing a solution, it's a company building a solution on a strong infrastructure, in this case the Microsoft ERP system. So what that means is it takes away the risk that you have with a company that may be here today and gone tomorrow. I think if Microsoft had gone tomorrow, we're all gone. So it that risk isn't it's bigger than one to worry about. So that's a real change, I suppose, in terms of the buy-in. And I know that when we're talking to people, they're saying, look, we see this, can you do that, or we're going to buy that, or so that's one key thing. And I think the other thing as well, again, in terms of the implementation of these systems, is that you make them very much user-oriented experience. So we have customers that they have some staff doing one screen and putting stuff on, and they have another member of staff entering into exactly the same place, but they have a screen designed for them, so their experience is relevant, and it and also hopefully simpler and easier. So there are two immediate benefits to using that kind of thing. So yeah, so those were, I guess, my kind of points, I suppose, in terms of answer to your question.
Yeah, so I think in terms of how we've structured Bevica, I think many years ago when we started Bevica, we did decide on it based on a platform of Microsoft, for those very reasons you mentioned, David, that Microsoft can provide the infrastructure, the basics, and then we can kind of build the best of breed functionality inside that. So for example, we don't have to worry about making tax digital or all the larger kind of UK compliance. Microsoft do that for us. We concentrate on the specifics that make our products useful for the drinks industry. In terms of how we've reacted, or how we react to the changes coming up ahead. So the way this impacts everyone costs is obviously very important. There was a really good series of tweets from David Lambert from David Lambert Wines, if anyone wants to go and search for it, where he goes through and details all the different costs that he's incurred because of Brexit and because of the pandemic. And it's actually quite scary. I think there's about 20 tweets, and each tweet is an extra cost that he has to include in his business now. And he's saying that this is getting to a point where it's difficult, very difficult for him to keep his prices down and keep his customers. From our point on Bevica, the whole changing landscape has also kind of increased our costs. We have to keep the product relevant. So every time the government come up with a new scheme or a new process, we're committed to the drinks industry to putting that into the product so that our customers can benefit from it. But then from kind of a practical point of view for our wine merchants and distributors, there's also the logistical and just human side of making all these changes. Celine, maybe do you have any experience of how people are trying to keep the costs down?
On that front, considering I set up my own business recently and stuff, I haven't kind of had the conversation with those people yet to go to that details. But for what I could observe for the few I work with, they trying to share responsibility about who, as you said, managing the data in the system and how we get that. So people are trying to figure it out how to use the system better, whatever they have in place is a Bevica or something else, to make sure they could then get ready for whatever new things happening and try to reduce the cost. So one of my clients who is based in France, she has more to kind of get data for her customer base in the UK. So then they have less legwork to do and things like that. So I could see now people trying to share about how they could manage and prepare for those new changes coming ahead. But I'm sure there is going to be way more things to do. Is the answer is always going to be human work? I'm not sure. So it's going to be, as Will mentioned, using maybe more power apps or things that could be developed to kind of, as I said, having an early idea about how can we streamline this part of the system, so then we could have the manpower in what still is the center of the beast, which for some of them selling and make sure customers are happy.
Yeah, I think also the structure that Microsoft have for the subscription charging definitely helps with costs. So basically, you're only being charged for what you're using. I don't know if David or Will, do you want to maybe describe how the Microsoft model works?
So, David, this is which one of us wants to grab this double-edged sword with that? So I mean, so the Microsoft pricing is pretty straightforward, which is, you know, you pay X amount per user per month typically for an annual commitment. If you do it monthly, it's more expensive for a monthly commitment, pay-as-you-go commitment, and that's the kind of the way it works for the majority of. For the majority of their solutions. One or two of them you'll pay more as your data size of your data increases. I mean, you know, if I kind of look at our channel of partners today, they look after approximately 45,000 customers. Not very many are paying for data. Most are paying for individual seats and individual users. But I would like to come back to one point that Celine made, if that's okay, which is about people. And, you know, if I kind of look at, you know, the mega trends that we're kind of seeing within the UK in particular at the moment, there is a war for talent, and which we're kind of seeing blazing in headlines at this moment in time. And we're seeing this rush towards productivity that we've never really experienced in this country. It's kind of strange, to be honest, because, you know, I've got quite a big office in Germany, and, you know, whilst the Germans are stereotypically held up as being super efficient, they do seem to use their ERP systems a lot to drive productivity. We've kind of seen that now reflected here in the UK, that actually, you know, productivity demands within an organization, not so much efficiency demands. I know that sounds a little weird, kind of putting those two together, but productivity demands, because, you know, it's not as easy to get staff into a warehouse, not as easy to get staff into a sales office, not as easy to get staff into a finance office as it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. You know, we're seeing that this war for talent actually driving organizations to look at their own productivity a lot more today than it probably was 3 or 4 years ago. So sorry to move off topic for a moment.
We have actually had a question come in from the viewers, and it was around whether anyone on the panel has a feel for how much a company should be investing into their personalized tech solution, and whether it can be related to annual turnover, or whether there are any other benchmarks that anybody could suggest if, for example, that a company is currently using Excel and they want to move to a personalized tech solution. I mean, obviously, Claudio can talk from a specific benefit point of view. Does anyone else want to talk about what that is going to be?
I think in the past, you could talk about a 5% or a 10%, of turnover, but it really, if you're an app developing business, then nearly all of your business would be probably around technology. While if you're very much a manual, processing organization, then it's very much people. So there's not probably a straightforward answer. I mean, the thing that Will said, and again, I would repeat, is that often, people look at the technology to provide the solution. Technology doesn't provide the solution. It's a business solution first. So the focus is to find out what the problem is, find out what the pain is, and work out what the solution is. And that may not be technology. It may be training. It may be, different people. It could be, a variety of things. So, we can't say that if you spend 50% of your turnover on technology, your business will be wonderful. But it might, depending on the business. So, so I think, yes, sadly, there's probably not an easy rule of thumb. It really does depend on the business and business needs.
100%. And kind of to echo what you just said there, David, I think it's super important to have some key ROIs identified. So, and your key ROIs could be financial based. So it could be, will we be able to sell twice as much with a new system, for example? That's a very simple financial ROI. Another ROI could be, we are employing 20 people to do a manual process. what we could do is employ 10 people to do that, to manage an automated process, and refocus those other 10 people on other growth areas within our business. So every ROI, I mean, and again, I've worked in this space for the business application space for a very, very long time, and typically, I tend to recommend look for 3 to 5 different flavored ROIs for your organization, because even though everyone's in the same industry on this call, you will have ROIs that are unique to your organization, and think of it in terms of hard KPI and soft KPI.
Yeah, I mean, that comes back to one of the questions that you were saying about earlier about kind of saving cost or improving with the technology. And the two things that I'd kind of written down, one was about, the automation and making tech actually work properly. But the other point, which again is, picked up there, was about reporting and the business intelligence stuff. And there's been, huge movement forward with that. And that, previously was very much kind of a really technical, really kind of, not part of the business, but it has become, proper business intelligence. Power BI is the Microsoft example, but realistically, the changes in Excel and things like that provide easy answers. So automation and business intelligence reporting are the big ones that I was thinking from your question.
Yeah, and all those things should be there, just present in any sort of ERP, not just Bevica. Our competitors as well, they will all have those sorts of things. So I'm not so scared these days as maybe I would have been 15, 20 years ago about someone signing up for a new system and then finding out 3 months later that it actually doesn't do what they thought it would do. I think nowadays people can do a lot more research themselves online. There's a lot more information out there than there used to be. Before, it's just a salesperson coming along and saying, this is how the world works, kind of, you should take it. Whereas now I think, especially we're seeing people coming to us having done their homework already and asking us the questions that maybe we didn't put on our blogs or on our online. But thinking about the question in a bit more detail. So the Bevica moved over to SaaS about 3 years ago. And before that, what would have happened is if we'd gone to if we'd had a new prospect, new customer, we would have said, for us even to start thinking about talking to you, there's 50 grand to start with, because it's 50 grand in discussing what you need, designing how it works, project managing, and so on. But with SaaS, what we've managed to do is get rid of that initial upfront cost. So we have a scheme, if you like, where there is no upfront cost. You're literally just paying per user per month, and we can get you up and running on the software in, let's say, 3 months, 4 months. Now, from a risk point of view, that's a huge difference on how much money you have to spend, how much resources you have to put into the project. And we're finding that that's quite popular, and we're getting a good throughput of customers. Is that something that anyone is seeing anyone else do, or out there in the marketplace?
So one thing I would say is kudos to Bevica, because I think you're kind of trailblazers in this regard. I think we're starting to see this become more. I wouldn't say it's a common business model, unless you're industry focused for organizations out there. Because and I'm going to just rewind a little bit, because you made some really interesting points about what we would describe as buying behavior in the marketplace. Lots of organizations out there in their second or even third or maybe fourth, fifth, sixth evolution of their internal business application solutions. And we've seen this refinement in terms of what organizations are looking for when they acquire a solution. And it goes back to what I said about this industry-specific solutions on top of a world-class platform. So we take the Bevica solution layered on top of Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central Power Platform. You're kind of de-risking it from the outset, and I think that's super key when it comes to buying any business application platform going forward. Is look for that industry solution to start with, because I'm seeing today 20-year-old, 25-year-old implementations that are stuck, that can't move. They've been so bespoke for their existing, for their, well, in many respects, workflows and processes and procedures that existed in Y2K. Obviously, the business has evolved since then, but they seem to be stuck because they're on this monolithic on-prem system that's kind of gone nowhere. But so number one, de-risk your shopping, your acquisition from an ERP perspective by going cloud, so it's constantly up to date, and going industry. So you're basically relying on a wide code base for your solution. So I think that kind of answers it in a roundabout kind of way.
Yeah, I think the days where you had to open your checkbook and say, just fill it in for me, are long gone, I think.
Oh, and as a guy that used to sell big on-premise ERP solutions, kind of sad about that. But actually, it's now all better for the consumer.
It's true. Thinking about the kind of the practicalities of where the product is going and what the product does, you mentioned integrations. The product is full of integrations, both kind of generic, so banking integrations, for example, and specific to the wine trade. Celine, what are the sorts of integrations that are most popular or that you're seeing people are working on?
I think at the moment, so as you said, the one specific in the industry, I think there is one which people are starting to look more and more at. It's a LiveX, like getting data from LiveX, which we feed through the e-commerce. And based on a pandemic, a lot of business has to kind of adapt and do a bit more e-commerce than they used to. And I think LiveX is really helpful for that. So that's something which I could see there is a question around it and stuff. So I don't think a lot of people have jumped the hoops yet and do it, but they try to look and see who is willing to do it and stuff. So myself, I will have a LiveX presentation to see how it is and be able to then say to people I work with, you could go ahead and just have a look at it. That will really help for that. Then I think there is a demand more and more, as you talked earlier about the new taxes coming in, so the plastic waste and waste regulation and stuff. So Bevica being very good on data collection, that's great. But so lots of my clients are looking at all the system where they could collect data. And as I said, as they could share the load of how to collect data and then integrate into the system to be able to do their tax reporting stuff. So I could see, and I've been like using it myself, a lot of people using something called bottle books, which is like getting data in and it got to go across from the producer to the importer to the reseller or something like that. So that's something as well I've seen getting more and more like popular on the market, and the platform itself for bottle books is improving better and better, so it's quite easy to access. And then whatever you want to do, you use bottle books as the way it is, or you could import your data in Bevica and then from there have one place where you do your reporting and then go better. So that's the two I will say I've kind of like seen coming forward.
Okay. No, definitely I think the e-commerce is something that we've noticed a big change in the last 2 years because of the pandemic, the way people approach e-commerce and kind of sales orders coming in. I think in the past, it was seen as maybe a way of servicing current customers and saving time and energy in creating orders. Whereas now I think people are really pushing e-commerce to get new customers because people are buying in a different way. Has anyone got experience of the way customers might be using e-commerce?
So, I mean, one of our customers on the wine side, I mean, they previously were taking phone calls, taking orders directly, having deliveries, people arriving at the door, and now, they're moving everything through the web. So, all of their order processing becomes, via their web channel. So if somebody phones up, they go onto the website and put it on. So that becomes, the central place for actually, pushing stuff through. So the integration and accuracy of integration, so stock levels, etc., are critical to be right on the web. So the integration, and that's Microsoft we'll see, but making a minor play into that field. So there's a new thing called Power Pages, which they're playing with at the moment, which kind of does that. We'll see where that goes. It's not been around that long. and I don't know whether it will stay. So I wouldn't get excited about it. But yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing. But it stresses the point that the web is the central place for putting your orders on.
And it's kind of interesting because if we look at Dynamics 365 Business Central, Microsoft have just funded and launched, I think it's last week actually, their integration with the Shopify platform. And Microsoft are making a big noise about that, and I think it's super interesting. If I'm in this very lucky position of being able to see some of the big trends within the buying patterns of partners, customers, but also I get to have lots of conversations with Microsoft about the trends that they're seeing from their data, from their telemetry of that data, and the number of e-commerce enabled ERP deployments, SaaS-based ERP deployments, has trebled in the last 3 years, last 2 years, that's kind of incredible. Now, one of the things that I've also seen is we work with a number of e-commerce vendors who have integrations into different Microsoft business application solutions. Staggering, is how I would describe the take up of those solutions. So we saw such and again, this is the advantage of being in cloud, is we saw a number of on-prem solutions quickly shift up into SaaS and pivot super quickly from a B2B to a B2C focus. And I know there's a few Bevica customers in there because I was delighted to test their websites and acquire some of their products.
Good, well done. It worked.
Speaking of customers, we just had another question saying or asking what type of wine industry company represents our fastest growing type of customer. Claudio, have you got a view on that?
Yes, so I think primarily because of the pandemic and because the on-trade kind of died and the off-trade was pretty much the only way people could get access to their drinks. The customers that concentrated on that area were the ones that did rather well during the pandemic. And interestingly, talking about websites, what we found is a few of our customers, whereas in the past they would have had one primary website that sold all their products, they thought they'd kind of create lots of micro websites aimed at specific types of their customers so that they could more easily target. So with something like Shopify integration or kind of web integration, it's easy to create another website that maybe has different branding, sells different products, and split what you're selling. And some of them found that to be a really, really useful way of attracting new customers, as well as grabbing existing customers to buy a little bit more. So I'd say at the moment it's off-trade customers that are doing particularly well. The on-trade has picked up in the last couple of months, and hopefully, come summer and Christmas, it'll be up to pre-pandemic kind of levels. Would be nice to see that. Okay, we have 5 minutes left. Is there anything from the panel that you'd like to wrap up with, or anything you think we haven't had a chance to talk about?
So I guess my comment, we haven't really talked about cybersecurity, and I think that's probably a critical kind of thing just moving forward. So my comments on that were just that the future is very much online and interconnected. So we should be beware of both of what our vulnerabilities are. So I think probably the cybersecurity thing is something that's really taking a lot more of our time, and that we're much more aware of that. So that's something to very much kind of stress on and look at how your systems are protected, and that's something that would be a critical kind of selling side of when you're purchasing something, to be aware of that.
That's interesting. Will, anything?
So yes, I'm not. Sorry, I thought it was a mute for him. So I mean, look, I think David just stole my thunder actually, because as you kind of head into an online first strategy or cloud first strategy, and by the way, don't think of it as an IT strategy. It's a business strategy first, technology strategy second. Is you've got to ensure that you've given your cybersecurity given cyber threats, the due care and attention that it absolutely requires. I mean, I always find it slightly weird that if you kind of look at how we treat our own banking security, right? So some of us have got those little calculators you kind of plug your card into. Some of us have got some incredible passwords with different layers. Some of us have got the multi-layered functionality security that kind of sends you a text message on your phone, enter your code. I always find it slightly bizarre that I don't sometimes see that due care and diligence when it comes to your financial application. So so yes, if it's heading to the cloud, make sure you've got your cybersecurity policy baked.
And Celine, anything you think we haven't covered?
No, I think it's fine, and I will actually echo David and Will on the cybersecurity. For my experience on one of my previous employments, that was something which was not looked after, and if we didn't have very quickly when we decided to move on to Bevica and stuff, look at that, the company wouldn't have been able to go and work from home with the pandemic. And so that making those steps, I remember it was scary on the investment and be like, okay, more money to spend. But when suddenly you had to send everyone home and be like, you have to work from home and everything, it was done in 24 hours with no problem. And that is, it's good to be able to do that. And yeah, it's true, I will echo. It's so important to make sure it's secure, because then you want to be able to use your system, and your company could flourish. But yeah, that's it. Yeah, I will definitely stress that point. Make sure if you want to invest on a good system, make sure your cybersecurity is there and in place. So
I'd like to just finish up by saying thank you so much to the whole panel, and thank you for joining us today. This will be available online and on demand. Thank you so much, everyone.